Asia Pacific regional collaboration with ICIP Malaysia, Philippines, as well as Pakistan. ICIP is the International Scientific Committee of Interpretation and Presentation of Cultural Heritage Sites. So let me introduce the background of Anna YAU to you. Anna has more than a decade of experience in heritage regeneration, management, and education. She is an accredited heritage conservationist, e-commerce and healthcare e-com, and project management professional, and partner of the nonprofit organization called Contemplate Culture Community. Her cultural heritage management experience covers urban and rural, architecture and living heritage conservation, heritage entrepreneurship, as well as teaching and training in the Asia Pacific region and internationally. In 2021, she was selected as one of the instructors of Living Heritage and Sustainable Development MOOC by UNESCO Paris. So without further ado, Anna, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Ken, for your invitation, and also I'm very honored to be the speaker of this webinar series. And let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, so before I start this webinar, I would like to emphasize that I'm not a psychologist, a clinical psychologist as such, or any kind of mindfulness trainer. It's just a sharing of my personal experience as a heritage professional, as well as my research regarding living heritage and also well-being, and also share my experience as a recovered patient. So I hope this webinar and lecture will give you some inspiration on how living heritage and also well-being are related to each other, and I hope it will inspire you in somehow improve your well-being. So the objective of today's webinar is to recognize the role of living heritage and the relationship with the community's physical and mental well-being through a few case studies. So we'll look through what is well-being, what is living heritage, and how they related to each other through a few case studies. So the first question is, what is well-being? In the last a few years, I have experienced quite a stressful workplace and experience, and therefore I start to explore why I feel unhappy, and then I think happiness, the definition of happiness, is somehow related to subjective well-being. So well-being from my research has many research that define well-being in different ways, and they have different dimensions and structures. And here I select a few that could easily understand, and hope you will get some basic understanding of it. So well-being is a state of feeling good and functioning well, which means your physical body could function well, and you have good physical health. And on the other hand, you feel good, you feel happy, you feel engaged, you feel enjoyment. So this is a very simple and easy understanding of what is well-being. But for me, I think my personal experience is that feeling good and functioning well does not really contribute all of the well-being. So therefore, I research more about what is well-being. And in the Chinese-speaking community in Hong Kong, we translate well-being into these three Chinese words. In Cantonese, Sam Ling Gin Hong, which has covered three dimensions: the physical well-being, emotional well-being, and also spiritual well-being. So spiritual well-being here does not only limited to religious beliefs or any religious spirit, but also how you are connected to your surrounding people, friends, families, colleagues, and also the natural environment and setting, as well as the universe. So well-being is definitely beyond physical and emotional, but also spirit. And then I start to understand it's not something about a individual person, it's something about a relationship between people. So more research has supported my feeling, personal experience and personal feeling, that indeed well-being has different levels. So it has individual well-being as well as community well-being. And for community well-being, it's usually constructed through interactions, especially in your workplace, because everybody understand that you spend most of your time in your workspace, and whether your workspace would relate to your personal interests and values and purpose of life will significantly affect whether you feel good or not. And eventually this kind of individual personal well-being through the interactions of people will build up a community well-being. And eventually this kind of community well-being will build up a societal level that how you participate in the society will also contribute to your well-being. So this kind of process inspired me that well-being is not simply about your personal self, individual, but also community as well as the society. And my further research has provided me further inspiration on about what is well-being. So this is a wellness view on the Princeton University research. It mentioned that wellness is not merely about the absence of illness or distress. It's actually a lifelong and ongoing process of making decisions to live a more balanced and meaningful life, which means well-being is just a chapter of your life. You feel the level of well-being now and future is maybe different, and you will be subject to a number of factors or a number of personal and also community experience. And this view has mentioned 7 dimensions of wellness, including emotional wellness, environmental wellness, intellectual wellness, occupational wellness, physical wellness, social wellness, and also spiritual wellness. So here, I think for emotional, physical, and social wellness is quite easy to understand. And for spiritual wellness, as I mentioned earlier, is not limited to religious beliefs, but also some of the customary practices or values that treasured by you and your family or your community that provide you a sense of purpose or sense of life in your daily living. And for environmental wellness, intellectual wellness, and also occupational wellness is sometimes quite often ignored or not aware, so well aware compared to the physical, social, and mental wellness. And for environmental wellness is about your interactions between yourself and also your surrounding environment, natural and also social. So it means that, for example, the frequency of your interaction with the green environment or with nature elements will significantly affect whether you feel safe or you feel healthy or you feel connected with the nature and the universe. And on the other hand, the international wellness is also something that we often forgot. Is because international wellness, whether you are able and being engaged to learn new knowledge or being able to share knowledge or skills with others, actually contribute to your own wellness. And in that way, you may be more creative, and this kind of experience will stimulate your mental health and mental activities so that you can be more engaged in bringing something good for the society. And occupational wellness is also something that is very significant. I personally have problems with the occupational wellness, so that's why I want to highlight this to you all, that your personal fulfillment in your job is very significant to contributing to your own individual wellness. And this maintaining a work-life balance is definitely one of the issue that we have to manage during the pandemic period of time. So especially for heritage practitioners, I think most of the people who are here in this webinar, they are from the heritage field, professional field, and we are always within a very contested situation that we have to balance the views of different stakeholders, community members, and also your professional standards, money matters, etc. So occupational wellness is part of very important elements. So therefore, I have a very short exercise for you all to do, is a wellness self-assessment. So I just picked up this occupational wellness test from the Princeton University's self-assessment report. I will highly recommend you all to take a few minutes to complete this 7-question test and see whether you have the level of your occupational wellness in your current situations. So based on your personal experience, you can rate each question with a score of 1, 2, 3, or 4, and subject to the final score, you would indicate some of the level of your wellness. So let's take 1 minute for you all to answer these questions, and it's not necessary for you to share this the result with you all, but I hope this result will indicate something for you to work on in the future. So let's take a short while to complete this test before I reveal how the results will indicate on the level of wellness. Okay, I think the questions are easy, and let's look at how well you perform. So, so if you score 20 or above, which means that you are demonstrating a very positive steps in this occupational dimension of the wellness, and you're setting a good example for yourself and also for those around you. And however, if you score a little bit lower, below 14, which means that it indicates some potential health or well-being risks, and I will highly recommend you to take active actions to look at seek for health or look for some well-being tools that help you to improve your physical or mental well-being immediately, so that you can have enjoy a better way of living. So especially in recent years, we have the tendency of looking at the economy of well-being, the economic benefits of well-being. So this is just to share one of the framework developed by the OECD. OECD has defined 11 key dimensions of dimensions that contribute to our current well-being. And our individual and collective actions significantly interacting with these key dimensions. And the results of our individual and collective actions are building up a pool of common resources for our future well-being. And this process is an ongoing process that we continue in a very dynamic way. One of the things that I would like to highlight here is OECD haven't included cultural capital as one of the resources for future well-being, which as a heritage professional, I quite disagree, because from our practical experience and in our daily life, we understand truly that how culture influence our well-being and how we are connected to each other through different kind of cultural activities, festivals, etc. So, I hope this lecture by connecting well-being and heritage will give you some sense of understanding, and hope this will become will be recognized as one of the key pillar and resources for building up our future well-being. So after giving a very basic introduction on the structures of well-being and how well-being is being constructed through individual and collective actions or interactions with our colleagues and families, etc. Let's look at heritage. So for those, I think most of you are familiar with this categorization, so I go through it very quickly. For cultural heritage, you usually categorize this into tangible and intangible cultural heritage. And for intangible cultural heritage, we often also name them as living heritage to highlight the living dimension, the living character of this kind of intangible cultural heritage. In my lecture here, in my webinars here, I highlight living heritage because I think the living character, the ongoing character of living heritage echoes a lot with the process of how we construct and build up our well-being. So it's also to remind that tangible and intangible cultural heritage are always closely interconnected and associated with each other. So when we do heritage conservation project, we always consider both sides, both aspects of the heritage together. And this is one of the key issues that we need to manage in our practical experience. And for living heritage, just to briefly mention about the convention, I think most of you are familiar with this convention, and in case you will need more information, you can search online in the UNESCO website. The living heritage exists in various ways and in various forms, and it could be a national treasure or something that happens here in our daily life. And this is the 5 main domains of the intangible cultural heritage. And one of the key character of it is that it is a sustainability and also inheritance is heavily relied on people and the community, the core groups, and that to make sure that it can pass on from generations to generations. So so in the safeguarding of living heritage, core community has a key role. It's not only about the individual, like the barriers or transmitters who are the petitioners, direct petitioners of the intangible cultural heritage, but how they form and connect with their colleagues and form a core community of groups, and how they interact with the wider community of interests and other partners in the society is very important in sustaining the living heritage. So referring back to the constructions of the well-being in my previous slides, is also it both echoes to the process that is built up from a individual level to a community level. And the process of the ongoing safeguarding of living heritage also echoes quite similarly with the process of well-being. So as I mentioned, ICH and living heritage rely heavily on the communities, groups, and also individual concerned. And these community groups and individual concerns will pass on their knowledge, skills from one generation to the generations. And throughout this process, they are not constructing, maintaining or identifying the living heritage, but at the same time, they build up a sense of identity, the sense of belongings, enjoyment, and also an income throughout the process. And this process is influencing not just the concerned community groups and individuals, but a wider community of interest and also society, that we could enjoy the cultural resources that we generate throughout this process. And what's more important is this process is continuous with the changing social and economic environmental conditions, that it is a dynamic interactions rather than a static interactions. And so this ongoing and living character echoes much with the process, the lifelong ongoing process of how well-being is constructed through various dimensions, like the physical, social, mental, spiritual, environmental, occupational, and intellectual wellness that I mentioned earlier in this webinar. And in the upcoming time, I will try to illustrate some case studies that how we may utilize cultural resources for well-being, and also how this process is actually also safeguarding and conserving some of the heritage resources in Hong Kong. So I have a few years of experience in working for this site and also projects, and it's also my personal experience that how my personal interpretation, put in this way, of how cultural heritage could be utilized to contribute to community well-being. So these few villages like Chi Wo, Mu Zi Lam, Gap Tong, and also Lam Chung is located in Hong Kong, and they are providing me a lot of ingredients for interpretation for this topic, the heritage and well-being. So I'm referencing to this 12 ingredients for best practice interpretation from this New South Wales guideline. And I hope throughout the process you will be able to automatically connect some of the features with this ingredient. So let me give you some background about the site. So the three villages that I'm going to talk about is located in Hong Kong, northeastern part of Hong Kong. So many of you may well understand that Hong Kong is a very urbanized city, but the urbanized areas only contribute about 30% of the Hong Kong's territory, and about 70% of Hong Kong is covered in the green areas, like a country park or some protected country marine park or green rural regions. And we have actually a lot of more than a few hundreds of vibrant village in the past in Hong Kong that exist in the rural areas. And these rural areas are very difficult to access. They don't have a road to access. So therefore they are well protected because of latest regulation of the country park, marine park, or rural park. And also they are really far away from the downtown area. So therefore they are kind of intact in the current situations, but they at the same time were abandoned because of the lack of services and lack of facilities. So in recent years, we have some project initiative to revital this cultural landscape. So the cultural landscape, I think most of you also have background information about cultural landscape, is about the interaction between people, nature, and also culture. So when the villagers settle into a very remote location, they will interact with the natural and cultural elements that are available in the immediate area, as well as from their ancestors, study their building techniques, skills, knowledge, beliefs, etc. So throughout the interactions of people and nature, They establish the way of living, the agriculture, so that they can produce sufficient food to maintain their living. And this kind of consideration of uses, functions, and also relationship and identity over generations, over hundreds of years of histories, create a cultural landscape. So from my perspective, cultural landscape, although is a landscape, a tangible landscape, they also have very good strong living character. So without the living character, without the interaction between the people and the culture and the nature, it's difficult to maintain a landscape. So this is one of the photos that from old photos of the area, that you can see this cultural terrace landscape was once very vibrant with a lot of agricultural activities, and is representative in the living history of the Hakka community settled in this area. Is also representative in demonstrating how people could live with nature and how the living spirit of the place reflect the long-term settlement and human history of the southern China. So from our perspective, cultural landscape is definitely a combination of tangible and intangible elements. So within this landscape, there were a few initiatives that have been carried out in recent years to revital the cultural landscape, as well as to try to look for ways to creatively connect the rural and urban areas together. So the first case is some of the mindfulness activities that were carried out currently happened in the Muizilam village. So this series of mindfulness activities was supported under the co-creation for community schemes for the Rural Sustainability Program initiated by the Center for Civil Society and Governance at the University of Hong Kong, and supported by the HSBC since 2018. There were two minor projects. One is the Homey Museum Mindfulness Journey project proposed by the Common Map. And also another one is the Xiujing experience proposed by Yun Wingchen. So what is the purpose of these schemes and also these projects? So this co-creation for community schemes is actually looking for creative ways to utilize the rural heritage resources for the urban citizens, and also the whole city's sustainability. So therefore, it gives a small amount of funding to support bottom-up projects that try to test some of the pilot creative way in working with the local community. And this too is one the field that we have the Hong Kong YAU team has selected. And what kind of activities they carry out is they basically bring people to the rural villages, usually with a guided tour with introductions of the local history of the villages, how the cultural landscape was formed, the local ways of life, the characters, significance of the place. By doing so, they bring a physical connection between people and nature together. So throughout a number of research about well-being, this kind of physical connections will help to trigger, stimulate emotions or other kinds of triggers that create thoughts or ideas or feelings or memories. And this kind of triggers, as I mentioned earlier, in the dimension of well-being, is part of the intellectual well-being. And in addition to some of the guided tours, they also offer like forest bathing, group activities that walk into the forest, experience the climb, the sounds, the natural resources, the clean air, the fresh air, etc. in the rural environment. They also have crossover activities such as crossover between art, mindfulness activities, and also nature, so that people could get into the nature and experience a different kind of wellness activities in a very different location. And also there are also one-to-one or a small groups mindful meditation activities that allow you to experience a different kind of setting of the city. So when we talk about mindfulness, I think this is not a lecture about the mindfulness and the mechanism of mindfulness, but briefly introduce mindfulness is actually one of the easiest way to help you to calm your stress and also bring awareness back to your own thoughts or feelings and also the surrounding environment. So I'm not so sure how many of you have this kind of mindfulness or meditation experience, but for me, meditation or mindfulness practice is one of the very easiest way to give me back time, and also activities that could bring me away from my very difficult mind. And on the other hand, from the wellness research, some research have also reflected the interactions between the heritage objects on space could bring memories and also emotional sensory triggers. So this kind of interaction will facilitate understanding of both the heritage as well as the self-development. So from my heritage professional perspective, I think mindfulness activities is one of the very good way to utilize and maximize the use of rural capitals. This is a very easy to implement project, and also they have very minimal intervention to the natural environment and making sure there's authentic and experience of the site and ensure the sustainability of the site. Is encourage the rural-urban interactions and also the nature and culture people interactions and understanding of the heritage significance. So this kind of projects will also bring different kinds of mindfulness practitioners together. Some of them are more emphasized on art, some of them are more specialized in the meditation or yoga. So this kind of collaboration will also trigger wellness among the practitioning community. The second case is the reviving of traditional craftsmanship at Lam Chong. So Lam Chong is another village located in the northeastern part of Hong Kong. They have this farming community established in recent years to safeguard the natural environment in this rural village. And one of the projects that also supported by the same rural sustainability program is the Rural in Action startup schemes that try to revital some of the rural resources for new kind of creative economy. So this is one of the projects that bring back Earth Plastic Wall. It was started since 2019. They make use of the natural resources such as the oyster shells, the soil, the earth, and also sands, etc., and try to revital the traditional formulas and recipes of the earth plaster technique. So they try to experience the formula by testing different kinds of mixtures and percentage of the sands, oil, sands, plastering, lime, etc., and put it into a environmental friendly interior environment. So in the process, they, in addition to revitalizing this, reviving this traditional craftsmanship, they also engage a wide range of practitioners, volunteers to participate in the process. So also many research has found out that volunteering in heritage project is one of a very effective way to bring well-being and wellness and positive life certifications, because it gives you a new kind of experience. And throughout the process, you build up your self-confidence. You are feeling less isolated. You have socializing opportunities, and also through learning from the skills masters or skills practitioners, you will have intergenerational engagement. And eventually you will be connected to the place and also connected to the heritage, so that they will feeling like being part of the community. So this kind of engagement or learning by doing experience for heritage practitioners and also for participants is very important, for not just safeguarding the living heritage, but also for the individual and also community well-being among this core community of living heritage. So in this process, the process actually is not short. They have been continued for a couple of months for the whole process. They were able to experience the mix of the formula, to putting the plaster on the wall, etc. And this kind of engagement will allow people to interact with the nature, to interact with the masters, and also bring awareness in and capacity building in sustaining this kind of cultural activities and also cultural living heritage for the future generations of people. And the third case is in Naichiwo, is a revival of the traditional healthcare method and also the cultural economy. This is a story that from this startup project is also initiated by a group of young artists, and they hear a oral history. They have a oral history interview with the local villagers and get to know that one of the local native plants, it has traditional healthcare uses. So therefore, they try to revital this kind of traditional uses through a more creative way. So they have this kind of new startup project called Bogeungzai in Cantonese. It's again supported by the Rural Sustainability Program by the Hong Kong YAU and HSBC. And they pick this naturally grown native plants in the local village, and throughout a process to create a range of new creative products from these natural plants. So what is this kind of plant? This is a chester tree. In Chinese, we call them bogeung, and it has traditionally, this kind of plant was used by the local villagers as incense, repellent, to make tea, and also in bathing, etc. So this kind of weed is now not commonly used in nowadays, because we have other commercial products that replace its function and uses. But this group of young people, they found this interesting to continue the story and continue the relationship with the nature. So that's why they have this startup. And this is their Facebook and IG. You may search and click and like them. The range of products they create is like the soap and the ointment, etc. And they are putting this on market in various kind of pop-up stores and selling online. So they are continuing the original use of this plant, but using different ways of presenting or making it more modern, so that it will resonate in the modern society. And at the same time, revitals the connection and spirit of the place through the rural economy. So cultural economy, from also some research that has also, they also have good contribution to well-being. Like they create some wealth and economic income for the host community. Through some of the cultural tourism activities, they will also promote the heritage values of the nature and also cultural resources. And this kind of economic activities will also help to mobilize the good use of some of the abandoned, like empty properties or abandoned heritage space and resources. But should bear in mind that the tourism activities should always be well managed. Otherwise, it will give risk to the overall well-being, also the community economy. And this kind of economic benefits does not only improve the petitioners, but also for customers who buy this product, they will feel that they are contributing to heritage, contributing to culture, contributing to natural environment, and therefore they will also kind of sense their own level of well-being and wellness improved throughout the process. So, by these few examples, I wish to summarize the process here. That is our heritage resources, our cultural resources through different kinds of activities or interpretations or experience. It will facilitate our physical interaction, which is the physical wellness. And also throughout the process will facilitate understanding of the heritage, understanding of the person themselves, self-development, and also being able to try to connect people together and facilitate community well-being. And eventually, it will build up some common cultural pool of resources that support the societal wellness and well-being, that eventually become the resources for the future heritage, sustainable development, and also sustainable development of the society. So by combining the process of safeguarding living heritage and also the process of establishment of well-being from individual level to community level, we can bring them together, that this kind of safeguarding and sustaining activities could help to accumulate our personal and communal experience throughout the process, using heritage as the main theme and main topics and features that integrate both social, social, economic, environmental, international, physical, well-being dimension together. And this kind of process is a lifelong learning process and echoes to both the living characters of living heritage and also the ongoing characters of how well-being is being constructed over different kinds of over different generations. So I hope this is one of the experience sharing that may inspire you to look at good use or new use of how cultural heritage or living heritage could be used to directly improve our well-being, individual and community level. For myself, as a recovered patient, I feel that participating in this kind of living heritage activities and in good connections with the petitioners will give me a chance to bring stimulations to my existing work and also to be able to connect to wider communities of interest that will help to bring new directions to this heritage management and sustainable development field. So not to mention, I think all of you also know that well-being, good health and well-being is one of the key SDG goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And I believe heritage has a lot of potential to explore more alternative ways to contribute to sustainability, and well-being is one of the few areas that we are less explored at this moment yet. So I hope you enjoy this lecture, my simple sharing about my research and personal background and experience. In case you want to know more about how living heritage is related to sustainable development, you may look at this online course, which is available free of charge online in the SDG Academy. So my last sharing is that the riches in life, positive and negative, makes us open to uncertainty. So as I mentioned earlier, well-being and also living heritage has a process. They may go ups and downs, and it's just a page of your life. You can always have your subjective decision making to improve your well-being and also to turn a new page of life. So I hope this very short lecture and very short presentation will inspire you to initiate new activities in your region and in your district or in your professional background workplace. So I hope you enjoy it. So I think the time is almost finished. I will pass this back to Kenneth to moderate the Q&A section.
Thank you very much, Anna. Very comprehensive introduction to us for the concept of feng shui and well-being, as well as the indigenous knowledge system and the intimate relationship between the human and nature, and also how the craftsmanship and skills come into the context as well. The other audience also agrees as well. Let me read out for you. And please take a sip of water. Are you ready for the Q&A? Yeah. So for the audience who watch from the Facebook Live as well, you can also leave your message. And my colleague from Philippines National Committee will pass the message to us in the chat box. And the audience here in the Zoom can always type your question or you raise it, and then I will unmute you as well. So let me read out the first question. Yeah. Of course, thank you very much for your presentation. In regards to the benefits of volunteerism, improved self-esteem, interpersonal relationships, did the project have the opportunity to measure these outcomes? And if so, can you explain more on how these benefits were measured?
Okay. So yes, the projects that I mentioned, they have a set of assessments, quite similar to the one that I put on the presentation, that you have to rate your experience, like subjective feeling of do you feel more relaxed, do you feel more connected with the community, do you feel better understanding of the site, etc. So there's a set of surveys before and after to measure how this kind of activities will improve the well-being or the lessons, the stress management, etc. So this kind of research, they are still, because the project are still ongoing, so we don't have the result yet, but the preliminary result has demonstrated that this kind of activity is only a trigger, a one-off trigger for long-term establishment of individual well-being. So it definitely needs time for you to continue this practice in future yourself. So in other terms, this is if you find it useful for your personal life, then it's always encouraged for you to continue to look for resources yourself to continue this kind of practice, or look for other ways, other kind of rural villages to visit, and to continue this kind of ongoing activities yourself.
And then the comments from Mr. Sohai and Noel say that your presentation is very much appreciable and comprehensive in several dimensions. So he feels that there's a lot to be learned from this model and can be a catalyst for social cultural transformation as well in the similar situation elsewhere.
Yeah.
And there's another question, I think Cyril from Planta. I think she understood that you have such a lecture, and she asked what's the reach of the programs presented here and how many people enjoy this kind of courses. Have such similar lecture been presented in any course program so far?
I think this is the first time for me to share this kind of activities openly. And I think she is asking about the number of participants in this kind of activities. For well-being kind of activities, it has number of participants has to be well managed. So it is not a large group of activities. We usually manage it within a small group size, like within 20 people. And depending on the nature of the activities, for example, the mindfulness activities, we have some recordings recorded so that the visitors, they can listen to the recordings and have the self-guided kind of tour along the village. For this kind of participants, we have more, like about 100. But for other kinds of activities like the one-to-one meditation activities, then the number of participants is much less because of the nature of this kind of meditation activities is limited by size and also limited by the ratio of tutor and participants. So generally, each of the projects, they have reached out to about a few hundred, but collectively we don't have the exact number because it's still an ongoing project.
And as I understood, like you all have the original inhabitants living there, so that's why they have a sense of belonging and probably sense of stewardship as well. So as an outsider, as a practitioner like you, how's the intervention come into place, and how they will receive your initiative and approach, or your pitching to them about this well-being and rural heritage kind of concept?
Okay, so let me answer this question in two ways. In the well-being way, using the well-being dimension, structures, etc. This is a kind of new stimulating activities. They haven't experienced this kind of activities before. So they also have a kind of curiosity to try and to being engaged in the process and see how, what is meditation called and what is mindfulness, etc. So in one way, they are curious about this kind of new activities, and so in other terms also contribute to the individual well-being. And on the other hand, from the heritage conservation perspective, this is always a process of engagement, and the process is not always positive. Sometimes you have because you can understand, you have diverse view from the stakeholders, and different stakeholders, they have different preference and their focus or priorities. So so when we work with the community, we always have there's always a process, and we could not. We should have our expectation management well in advance. That is not always easy to engage each of them to have the same amount of openness or welcoming attitude. So but we are fortunate that most of the villagers who are currently living working at the site, they welcome this kind of new initiative. At least they welcome us to test some kind of new models in the area, because they also need external help to look for new creative ways on utilizing or revitalizing the village. So we are keeping a good relationship with them, and the process is still ongoing. So this is one of the reality we have to face.
And follow up on what you say. So Kara have a question saying that she's curious about the negative emotion if triggered in any of the programs, and if so, whether there's immediate intervention being introduced.
Immediate intervention refers to the
objection to your approach, or some negative feedbacks and etc.
Okay, yeah, and I also again answer this question in two ways. From the wellness perspective, happiness is not you always feel happy doesn't mean you have good happiness. So as I mentioned in my last live, which is in life, both you need both positive and negative experience in your life to make it open to uncertainty. So I will see in this way that this is the necessary process to have negative experience. This is how I think this we can see in this particular attitude. And from heritage conservation perspective, again, I think we have to consider whether our intervention is echoes to the spirit of the place, especially the character of the heritage site, and also the ongoing future of the site. From the project team and also from my personal perspective, I think some of the very traditional heritage, they will definitely need some creative method to better utilize them in the modern society, and also to resonate them in the changing economic and social environmental conditions. And this some of this kind of new initiative will always need a so without a testing period, it's difficult to understand or get to know whether they are possible or whether they are feasible or not, or whether they are suitable to continue in future or not. So this kind of openness is also, I think, important to for our heritage practitioners to consciously putting the management potential impact, but at the same time, not to limit ourselves to some of the tested research way, but open ourselves to new ideas on how to revitalize, continue or safeguard the heritage resources.
So there's another compliment from Facebook, Jason Villiers, said that it's very insightful. Living heritage is indeed significant for our well-being. And there's another follow-up question from Mr. Soha as well. Your presentation pointed out that revival of traditional materials and craftsmanship can actually support the continuity of the same and can be developed as a resource for future generations. So can you elaborate?
Okay, the case that I showed in my lecture is the revival of the traditional craftsmanship of the earth plaster technique. So traditionally, in this rural villages, they also make use of this oyster to make lime as one of the building materials. So this kind of traditional craftsmanship of utilizing natural resources is echoes to the current trend of using more environmental friendly building materials, such as green building, etc., and reducing the carbon emissions, and also nature-based solution, etc. So but on the other hand, if you look at the whole supply chain, it may have different results. So if you look at the supply chain from the production, from the transportation, the processing, to eventually the implementation, then it is absolutely a lot more things that need to be managed in order to make it more sustainable. But I think we should not limit ourselves to this kind of new initiative and tests. I think, as I mentioned, this kind of new ideas always need time to test, and the advantagement of technology, advantagement of new kind of technology, funding, etc., may give us some opportunities and inspire some new methods to improve the whole process. So at this moment, I think we should have good documentation, identification of all of this kind of traditional craftsmanship when they are still alive. So at least we understand how much we have and how much resources we can utilize. And then the next step will be look at how we can revital them through a more sustainable way and build up a more sustainable system that support the whole supply chain process.
Yeah, it's also very echo back to the circular economic concept as well. There's another question from Gemma Cruz Araneta. Thanks you, Ms. Yao, very enlightening. Your examples are all in green areas. Are these models applicable to urban areas where built heritage is often demolished instead of being given adaptive reuse?
Yes, I have this question to myself too. So whether like built heritage in the urban areas will have the same kind of results compared to living heritage. I think for living heritage, they have the very strong characters of the living ongoing process and the intergenerational connection between different generations of bearers and transmitters. And the nature culture relationship in the rural areas are much stronger in this kind of village green areas rather compared to the urban heritage. So for urban heritage, I think we should think it in work it out from a different perspective, because the whole economic, social, and context is very different. And one of the way that when I was one of the tutor for sustainable heritage management course with the UNESCO, is that we tend to use constructions or engineering approach to address problems in the urban heritage, especially built heritage projects. But at the same time, we can always use alternative method like creative social innovations, building up social capacities or social enterprise to complement the process, or using green engineering process to support heritage conservation. So in the technical level, I think this is one of the approach. And from the well-being level, I think depends on the type and nature of the built heritage. Some of the built heritage, they have been abandoned for decades. So it's quite impossible for us to connect with the core community that used to use or manage the place. And we are doing a completely new kind of, we are constructing a complete new generation of community and stakeholders for this through the revitalization project. So the connection is mainly through the software, like histories, like the spiritual dimension. So or intellectual dimension. So I think again, it's quite impossible to have equal level of actions for each of the dimensions, but we can emphasize some of them and make it more balanced eventually in the future.
There are two questions here. I can lump it up together for you. First one is from Amado de Jesus. Thank you very much for your presentation. The integration of culture, heritage, and nature is actually nothing new, but your presentation was very comprehensive and look at so many possibilities that can possibly be replicated in other countries. So his question is, how can you get started on this program? And where do you start? Is the government a major player in this program? And then there's another question from Tina Pateno as well. So she would like to know who are the proponents for this project, whether funder is HSBC or HKU, and could you speak a bit more about their interest in such projects and why they would fund them?
Okay, so how was it started? I was not I was one of the project team member for this project. I'm still involving in some of this rural startup and also co-creation project. So it's all begin with a vision to revitalize the rural areas and make it more sustainable within the city context, so that we can look into how rural sustainability could contribute to the overall sustainability of the city. So with this big vision, the Hong Kong YAU proposed to HSBC Foundation to look for funding to revitalize one of the village in Hong Kong, which is YAU, and then eventually extend to the neighboring villages. So this is how the project was began. And what are the interests from the Hong Kong YAU project team? Hong Kong YAU Center for Civil Society and Governance is a research project to try to look for ways to formulate a model that could utilize in not just Hong Kong, but also applicable in the Asia Pacific region, that may help to better connect rural and urban together, and as well as to contribute to the sustainability and sustainable development of cities in long term. And from the HSBC perspective, they are foundation. They are also looking into trust and reliable partners to test new models of contributing to environmental, social, and cultural sustainability, and also as part of their ESG responsibility. So I would also like to highly appreciate the long-term foresight vision of HSBC, because this is unusual for a foundation to support a multi-year projects, and the funding is very important to try something new that is influential, not just for Hong Kong but also for Asia Pacific.
So the Jockey Club was not eyeing on this actually.
The Jockey Club is supporting another project in the village. They are mainly supporting the build heritage village houses revitalizations. So they are different. They focus on different things, but they are also one of the funder in the area.
And for the three case studies that you highlighted, I believe their villages were involved. But how about the Yim Tin Ji, the off island from Saigon, whereby they just furnish up as an education center for the soap production, but actually the original inhabitants may not there as much as the three case studies that you highlighted? Or what is the difference in your view actually?
Is the intention is different. So first of all, for Yim Tin Ji, the intention for of course for the soap plant is of course a revitalization of the traditional soap production industry, and but because of a number of regulations and issues, they could not eventually revitalize it as a production in production scales. So so the intention is a little bit different. They look at just one soap production industry versus like YAU and they are looking at the revitalizations of a rural community. So this kind of intention is different, and also they have different contexts. One is in Saigon on an island, and the other one is also on northeastern part of Hong Kong. They have different protected areas surrounding. So the context is different. So therefore, the actions that were took place were also different. And of course, eventually, the last one is the level of local community participation, the number of local villages, and how they foresee the future of this site is they are different. So So we cannot always copy and paste the model from one village to another village. It also need to adapt to the local context and local issues, and also different kind of funding issues, transportation, regulation, etc. So this is how I personally see the difference.
And since you mentioned the product of Bokyongji, and I freshly returned to Penang, Malaysia here, I visited the tropical spice garden. And of course, spice root is quite our history for Malaysia context as well. And then it's quite thrilled to see how they rebrand and also package it as a product to sell off to tourists. But how do you see or say words to those who only see as product packaging, would utilize the local ingredients and products and not related to the living heritage behind actually, the ICH part that you would like to emphasize on?
Okay, so this is how I think heritage practitioners could contribute more. So I think I really appreciate some of the creativities and the design talents of some of the by creating new brandings for this kind of products and making it more the economic values of the products higher through a better branding and better design and packaging, etc. But I guess for this kind of production, they are coming from a design perspective or branding perspective, without full considerations of the whole holistic living heritage system behind. So this is where I think there are potential collaborations, crossover between heritage practitioners and creative industry that we can try to contribute more to make sure this kind of products could contribute to both heritage significance as well as to economic and social benefits of the wider customers and also producers. And I think this is actually one of the areas that we may have further development of research. So and I think most of the funding they currently focusing on like technology, fintech kind of new initiative. And for cultural sector, creative industry, they need more, also need more funding and support to initiate this kind of cross sector interdisciplinary collaborations.
Kara, please check whether there's more question from the Facebook. And also Anna, because you wrap up the presentation quite earlier, and if you would like to have final remarks before we wrap it up as well, even though actually we still have 15 minutes left. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe I could share a little bit about my personal experience in working in the field, heritage field, and about how to overcome the well-being issues, mental illness issue. I think is why I selected occupational wellness as a self-assessment test is because I think that I think this is applicable to all industry as well. You work well in your job, you complete your tasks on time, you complete you satisfy your boss, your immediate supervisor, your funder, etc. Doesn't mean that you have good occupational wellness. So this is not something directly related to HR. You have a good standing in the society. It's not necessary you have good physical or intellectual well-being. So I think it's good to have a very cautious mind on how to balance these two in your daily life. And it is also very important to look for assistance, help on internet or through your friends, because this actually wellness and the performance of your work and your performance in your family, friends, they are closely related. So if you, I will have once isolate myself from friends and concentrate on my job and on my work, and that's not a good sign for us all to work in that situations. So so if in case you have any kind of difficulties, I think it's worthwhile to talk to the colleagues in the area, especially those who have, like us, we all who have a heritage background, we understand the situation. Sometimes you are really mad at the contractors, mad at the consultants, etc., etc. So it's good to have a sharing among the colleagues with similar backgrounds and experience, and always look for help when you are in need.
So gearing towards the end of the session, actually, we would like to have the photography session. So please get ready. But at the meantime, Anna, there's one audience from the Facebook. He just want you to revisit how living heritage is defined and understood in this context. Probably he come in late, actually. This question come from Kevin Florentine. So while the others can get ready for the photo session later, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I because I assume the petition the audience are from the field, so I didn't have much explanation on ICH and the details in ICH, but I think the convention itself is self-explanatory. So I think he or she may visit the previous part.
And before we move on to the photography session, would you like to talk about your incense making future endeavor to tap on?
Okay. Yes, I myself is a petitioner of the living heritage. I'm a candidate for I'm learning incense making, I should say that, by making use of the traditional native plants as the main ingredients for the incense making. And I trying to, and from my personal experience, incense making is not just about the technique on how the way that you make incense. It's actually a tons of knowledge behind on how do you mix different ingredients together, and how do you achieve your self philosophy, the sense, by making a beautiful sense and making this instance enjoyable by a wide range of community members or your friends. So I think intangible cultural heritage itself is a way for you to train your well-being, and also international knowledge about traditional cultural heritage and also history, etc. So I hope my products will be able to share with you all very soon. I'm in the experimental process.
So officially, I would like to say thank you to Anna again for accepting our invitation for this every third Sunday noon of the month, and as our second speaker for this series. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation again. It's my honor to participate in this webinar, and I hope my personal experience will inspire you all to trigger more good projects and initiatives in your region.